At return values. What if instead of printing the result, I wanted to return the doubled result? If I were to return one value from function, if I were to return this, and I'm just going to make it extra clear by assigning it to a variable. If I were to return this, I would need to change my function call. Now watch closely to the way that I modify my function call in response to the return value. Instead of printing the value, I'm returning it. Now, of course, I can do whatever I want with the value. I can print it, for example. What I want you to focus on is the relationship between the return statement on line 15 and the fact that I'm assigning the call to a name. This connection must be made to fully understand what's happening. For what we saw last video was that when I pass an argument, a name has to be up in the call. When we return a value, returning a value means we must place a variable to the left of an equal sign in front of the function call. What we're saying is that doublet passes 5 as an argument. The call to the function doublet passes an integer argument 5. 5 becomes 10 and is returned from the doublet function, the value 10. That 10 is assigned to A. This is why on line 19, when I pass up 1.4, 1.4 is assigned to num. Num is doubled to val 2.8, and we're returning 2.8. That's why C is 2.8. Now you may understand why it was when I was calling out the line numbers that were processed as I made the call, that we go this way when we're reading this program. First off, when we read the program and we're considering the program flow, we recognize that lines 13 through 15 are going to be loaded as a function. We don't execute them until it's called, but it does get loaded. And then execution begins on line 17. We go from 17 to 13 to 14 to 15, then back to 17 before going on to 18. So the reason that I said we go from 15 to 17 is that we need to, in some cases, assign the return value to a variable. Again, when we call doublet on line 17, 5 gets passed up to the function and num becomes the value 5. Val on line 14 becomes 5 times 2. That's 10. Then we return the integer 10. That means that if we were to print A, what would we see? We'd see 10. Why would we see 10? Because 10 was returned. If I were to comment these so that you could see what's going on, we're really returning 10 here. A becomes 10. Why do we say that A equals 10? Because 10 was returned from the function. And the value that's returned gets copied or really aliased, renamed A outside the function. So num is 5, then A becomes 10. On line 20, we call doublet and num becomes what? 101. When we return 202, B becomes what? 202. Then finally, when we call doublet again, num becomes 1.4, we return 2.8, and what does C become? 2.8. The connection between the argument in the call And the name in the definition must be understood. Num is 5, then num is 101, then num is 1.4. The return value, which will be successively 10, then 202, then 1.8, each of these return values gets assigned to the variable that's assigned in the call. Of course, you know what I mean by call. Where are the 3 calls occurring? Line 17, line 20, and line 21. Each call means that we're jumping up to that function so that we can execute it. And each return value means that the variable that we're assigning to from the call will receive that variable. So let's run through this one more time. First off, program flow. 17, 13, 14, 15, back to 17, then to 18. 20, 13, 14, 15, back to 20, then on to 21. 23, 13, 14, 15, back to 23, then to 24. That's the program flow. When we call the function, for example, on line 17, it jumps up to 13 so that it can execute the block, 13, 14, 15. After 15, we go back to the line where the call occurred. And the reason I said we go back to 17, going back to 17 doesn't mean that we're calling doublet again. It means that we're assigning the return value to A. From line 20, we jump up 13, 14, 15, then back to 20 so we can assign the return value to B, and so on. Now let's talk about the variables, the arguments. 5, line 17, we're about to jump up to 13. What is the value of num? From 17 to 13, num is 5. From 15, where val is 10, we jump back to 17, and now A is 10. Okay, line 20. We call doublet on line 20. 101 is passed as an argument. So what is the value of num on 13? It's 101. When we return 202 from the function, what is the value of B? 202. When we call doublet on line 23, we're passing 1.4 as the argument. So we jump from 23 to 13. What is the value of num? It's 1.4. When we return 2.8 from doublet, what is the value of C? 2.8. It's important that you listen to me saying this to you enough times that you understand what's happening and that you can give me the answers that I'm looking for when I ask you this question. What is the value of num? What is the value of A? What is the value of num? What is the value of B? What is the value of num? What is the value of C? I'll give you a challenge video that'll ask you to answer these questions without any hints, and that will come next.